let's go ahead and get started today. So again, welcome everyone. My name is Lisa Baining and I'll be your moderator for today's session. We are excited to have you join us for our November Business as Unusual webinar series, where we are talking to badass industry leaders who are surviving and thriving in today's climate. As a reminder, everyone is on mute only status, so I highly encourage you to use the chat function today or the QA option. I'll be monitoring that throughout today's session and asking Allison any questions that come up. So we'd love for this to be a live interactive session. So as we go through, we'll make sure we pepper those questions in throughout today's presentation. Also, as a reminder, for those that do sign up for our webinar, the first 5 people do get that $20 Grubhub gift card to have restaurants. So again, Jeffrey D, Stacy M, Janet M, Mary Ann N, and Debbie R were our winners today. So excited to see where they decide to order lunch or maybe a late lunch today, depending on how their day is going. With that, I'm going to go ahead and turn things over to Kathy Steele, who is the owner and principal of Red Caffeine, as well as Allison Grealis, founder and president of WiM Manufacturing Association, as well as the Education Foundation. So welcome, Kathy, and welcome, Allison.
Thanks.
Thank you, Lisa. So love to kick it off. I think that Allison is really befitting of Red Caffeine's mission, building, organizations or brands that people want to work with and for. Really excited to have her on today. And so Allison, thank you so much for joining us. I'd love you to kind of start with your journey, your career journey. Tell us a little bit more about women in manufacturing.
Sure. So my name is Allison Grealis, and I am the president and thrilled to be president and founder of the WiM Manufacturing Association and Education Foundation. I started my career in not-for-profit management and working with trade associations almost now 20 years ago. And when I started working with trade associations, I had the great opportunity to work with the Precision Metalforming Association. They at the time were a 50-year-old organization that had mostly members that were comprised of small to mid-size, privately held, family-run businesses, some of which maybe are on the call today. And it was amazing to get to meet these family businesses that grew to second, third generation organizations. And so many of them had women leaders that were then at that time rising the ranks. Many of them were daughters, nieces, relatives that were taking over leadership in these businesses, and had the great opportunity to work with them to evaluate what type of resources they needed to be successful in growing and sustaining their companies, as well as to look to see how could they benchmark and support one another. So in working with those metal forming women, we soon realized that there wasn't a national resource for women leaders in manufacturing. And so we decided to first connect women through a conference, which we called our summit. And this year we celebrated our 10th annual summit. And what we heard from that conference in the first year that we held it, we had 133 women participate from all over the country and in all different roles and responsibilities in manufacturing. They shared that they were interested in staying connected. They wanted to join our organization and to become members. So I then quickly created a business plan. We created membership options for people to join our organization, and then started to create a menu of the different resources and services that we could offer individuals and then the companies that they were affiliated with. I often get asked, what type of manufacturing career did I have? Uniquely, I was not a manufacturer, nor was I an engineer. I was an English pre-law women's studies major. So to me, it's been really interesting to learn over the course of the past 20 years and tour probably more than 1,000 manufacturing companies to get to see how things are made, to see the ingenuity and the expertise and the creativity and just knowledge that these women in manufacturing careers possess. And it's been so excellent to be able to provide them resources that are useful for them as they're trying to not only navigate their careers, but ultimately we want to see these women advance. So to get more women, not only to create equity in the industry, to have more women represented, but most importantly, to have more women represented in leadership who can change cultures, who can change decision-making, and really lead us to more inclusive environments.
I love it. I mean, honestly, I too kind of fell into manufacturing. I'm not running a manufacturing organization, but I am deeply passionate about the industry. It's a little bit over 70% of our client base are in manufacturing. So I absolutely agree. And it's been great to be a new member of Women in Manufacturing for Red Caffeine this year. So tell us a little bit more about like the services that the organization provides to women, as well as there are men involved as well.
Yes, we're a very inclusive organization. That's part of our mission, is to support inclusivity. So we highly encourage male participation, and as well men to join as members. We know men are really important as allies, and so many men occupy the managerial positions that are promoting and are hiring individuals. So it's really important to have men members as allies in the work that we do. So as we look specifically to the programs and services that we offer, we've expanded those year over year for both our corporate and our individual members. I would say first and foremost, our main benefit and the reason we got started was to create a community. So women's communities and women were grouping organically or finding resources or a support network. So first and foremost, we provide women year-round access to an online community, as well as live communities normally in non-pandemic times, where they could meet face-to-face through our chapters, to which we have now 27 of them total throughout the country. So we provide that access to this local community and access and accessibility to a larger national network of women that they can benchmark against, that they can start to have dialogues with. We have a self-service mentoring program where you can identify maybe someone you want to mentor or someone who you maybe would like to have as a mentee. So we try to make these connections and create a network. So especially for those women that are maybe just the one or two females at their facility, that they feel like they're not alone, and they feel like they've got this community of other women doing similar things and experiencing similar things throughout the country that they can lean upon for support and guidance. So our network is first and foremost. Secondarily, we have designed some very powerful formal leadership programs. So we now have 3 of them that we've designed, and a new one that's coming online here for us in 2021. And we've tried to be very cognizant and aware of the different levels of women in manufacturing and the different needs they have along the way. So we've looked at core competencies that we align directly with women in leadership. And then we've taken those core competencies and we've built them in at different levels and with different topical matter and curriculum at different points of a woman's career. So we have an early career program that we call our management development program for those with less than 5 years experience. We have a executive level program that is specifically for executive level women, that's in partnership with Case Western Reserve University, called Leadership Institute. And then we also do a leadership consortium, which is new this year, which is both for men and women leaders in manufacturing. And we talk about things like hiring techniques, unconscious bias, leading innovation. So lots of great content in a cohort, again, that's mixed with both male and female leaders. And our newest program coming online next year is our Empowering Women in Production program. So we know often the women who need us most are women on the shop floor, women in the hourly ranks, who maybe don't have the accessibility to go off-site to training or to conferences or events. So we're bringing this program, almost like a program in a box, to companies where they can help deploy this training for their women in production. We provide coaching, we'll provide assessments, as well as all the tools that companies need to lead these women through a training program. And then as well to help them build a cohort of other women in production across the country that they can be connected to. So our network, our formal leadership programs, and then as well this access to individuals, again, through our chapters. Our chapter network is one of our most highly rated benefits. So our 27 chapters are delivering local access to plant tours normally, access to local training, and then also great resources such as community colleges, partners in education as companies are looking to recruit. And then recruitment resources are huge. That's been something newly that we've expanded over the past few years. We know all manufacturing companies, or not all, but most, are prioritizing hiring or are struggling with hiring individuals, especially those that are diverse candidates. So we've worked very closely to expand our recruitment resources. We not only have a job board called WiM Works, but we also have just launched virtual career fairs. So we heard from companies that, hey, we can't be live to recruit. We can't go on campuses. So how can you help? So we've created 2 virtual career fairs. The first one on Monday, December 14th, where companies at a low cost can have a virtual exhibit, and where job seekers can attend, especially those displaced by COVID, and maybe look for a new position or opportunity. And I think right now we're at more than 50 job seekers already signed up. And I think we've got a little under 10 companies already signed up. So we're excited to see how we can foster these individuals coming together for job hiring and job seeking responsibilities and needs.
Wow, that is a lot. Can we unpack that a little bit?
Sure.
I love the idea of the different levels of, of sort of leadership skill development. I think, running a company and elevating young people, that was my first experience. Like, oh, people just don't automatically become leaders. There does need to be some investment in skills training. But I think that we did get one question that might also give some color to this. So can you talk about like something that, that is a real life case study of how maybe one of your mentorship programs or one of your leadership programs has impacted somebody's life? Is there a story you might be able to tell around any of those offerings that could help us see the benefit beyond, I think it's clear from the different levels. I love how you split it out, but could you tell us a little bit more of a story?
Yeah. So, two people often come to mind. So that Leadership Institute program for women in manufacturing and STEM that we do in partnership with Case Western Reserve University, that's now in its 6th year. Our 6th class starts in February of 2021. And I audited the first 2 years of the program. And there were 2 women in particular that were in our year 1 of the program. And again, it was more intended for those who had some type of managerial experience or responsibility. Again, more leaning towards executive women. But there were women in that first year of the class who were probably at more of the early manager phase of their career as we were first getting started with our cohort, and companies really wanted to try it out. And we were also looking for women to be part of that first class. And so one woman was an office manager for a small size aerospace manufacturing supplying company in the South. And she had this office manager position and responsibility, but had lots of appetite to grow in her family-run business. It was a family-run business. She wasn't a family member, but had interest again in trying to rise the ranks and someday even aspire to have a leadership role in the company. So fast forward 6 years later, she completed the program that year. She built a great network and a cohort of individuals that she participated with in the program. They actually still to this day do monthly Google Hangouts where they all hold each other accountable for their goals, for the priorities that they set. They help again coach and mentor one another. And 6 years now later, she just signed her ownership papers to be co-owner of this small size company in Georgia. And she attributes much of that to the fact that WiM grew a network for her that she never would have found otherwise. She not only went through the program, completed the program, which does include things like 360 assessments and ESKIs. It included things like, again, coaching, both from the peer perspective and executive coaching, gave her lots of great kind of knowledge on how to lead successfully, how to manage others, leading with expectations, lots of great kind of content. But it was that network that I think was so very powerful for her as a participant to have that group of women, about 20 plus that were in her first year program, that she could go to along the way for advice and guidance and instruction to say, if my ownership is my goal, or if I want to be an owner leader of this organization in the next few years, how do I get there? So she had other women leaders from other types of organizations that she can benchmark against. And there was another woman in the program that year too, who was with one of our corporate member companies. And she at the time was a manager level individual for her company. She had aspirations to grow. And in the 6 years since completion of the program, she's grown to a senior director at her organization. She attributes WiM as one of the major factors for that she gained the confidence to ask and to feel ready for positions, and to not feel like she had to have everything checked off the box to be eligible to vie for a position. And then as well, again, that community, she's part of that group that still meets each year. They meet in person 1 or 2 times a year, and then they do those monthly hangouts. So again, that peer network is so very important. That's why owners, leaders all over the country, we look for others we can talk to figure out solutions and to not waste time kind of recreating the wheel if others have done so successfully. So I would say those 2 graduates, and we have many more. To date, we've graduated more than 120 women from our formal leadership programs. And we're so very proud of all of their accomplishments, and so very proud of how many have been promoted and have risen the ranks since completion.
Fantastic. And I think, I couldn't agree more that having peer leadership groups or peer groups to go to fast track your learning or share experiences have just, continued to propel my career forward. So I absolutely think, something like this would be so beneficial to so many organizations that just don't have that ability to do those types of programs in-house. So let's flip gears a little bit and talk about, some of the things that you've seen this year. Like, what have been some of the big kind of trends, or, what the big impacts that you've seen your membership organizations go through in 2020?
Yeah, so one of the things that we quickly did, our organization, about half of what we spend our time doing is live event production. So providing people local opportunities to connect and to come to national programs live. So obviously with pandemic, we had to pivot pretty quickly to virtual. So as we did that, we knew that there would be kind of a disconnect, that people might be still hungry for making connections with their peers all over the country. So we created community chats that were held for 5 months, in which we were providing people a platform and a forum that they could come to have advice and support during these very changing times. And then as well, to be sharing best practices from company to company and individual to individual as to how their companies were responding to the current pandemic. So we created that as a weekly vehicle for people to connect, to dial in. We had knowledge experts that joined us. And it was amazing to hear, again, companies of all different sizes, how they were impacted by the pandemic and how they were responding. So we learned many creative techniques that companies were using for traceability, for example, of virus and for contagions within their organizations. We heard how companies and leaders were dealing with the fact that it's difficult to collaborate or communicate, or maybe a little bit different ways to communicate and to collaborate, given kind of the virtualness of the current day. So lots of great practices were shared. And I think companies, again, the individuals that participated benefited from having a support network that they could go to hear real time. What are people doing to adapt? How are you thanking the shop floor individuals that, don't have that luxury of working from home and are still going in the same hours, if not more hours, because perhaps they were connected to PPE or some of the response products that the pandemic brought. Hearing creative solutions of how companies were engaging and thanking those employees and keeping connectivity with those that were kind of in office administration, as well as the plant and production floor. So that was really useful. And what we've heard from companies is that companies have all been impacted differently. Some companies, they were deemed essential, so they've never stopped, and actually their volume has increased perhaps over the last 9 months. So their work and life experience post and current pandemic may look very different from a company where their volumes dropped off and where they don't have the same types of levels of manufacturing that they did prior. What we're hearing is that companies of all sizes have learned to adapt. There's been a large jump to using technology to obviously continue business and to accelerate business. And so I think those are really good things. And I think, again, hiring has been a huge topic that has been brought up by companies, that they all are still, most or if not all, are still looking to hire at different roles and responsibilities. And so they're having to be creative as to how they find and train and onboard these new employees.
Yeah, and to that point, with your upcoming career fair, are you looking at candidates across the board, from production floor all the way into management positions? Is that the types of recruiting experience that we would expect if we were attending or participating?
Yes, all levels of manufacturing talent is being looked for. And the companies, there's I think a whole virtual explanation on our website as to how the fair will work. But it's an opportunity where companies can post what specific positions they're trying to fill. Then companies, individuals who are seeking can kind of match with who they want to talk with. And likewise, companies can match who they'd want to talk with as a candidate.
Fantastic, thanks. I do want to comment. I attended a number of your Connect events, and in a time when it was so there was so much social, friction going on. The one takeaway I had was that it was the most incredibly diverse group of women I've ever been in, like, a virtual room with. There were people from all over the nation, different career levels. There were people from Africa and other other countries. It was just like kind of an interesting side note from, just the information that was shared. It was just how diverse the room was. I really thought that was a pretty cool experience. So let's, as we're talking about diverse experiences and everybody's push to build organizations that embrace different cultures, different people. Even beyond just women, I absolutely am disturbed to see this metric around the fact that maybe 1 in 4 women are thinking about deprioritizing their career and their career advancement just based on some of the experience of COVID. I actually heard that similar stat at a compensation conference last year, and it blew my mind. I never even thought about women's choice between family and work and the impact it has on their career advancement. But talk to us a little bit about starting at the high level, what are the things that you are recommending or seeing in terms of helping organizations with their diversity initiatives, and maybe share a couple of stories that of some of your members that you've seen in terms of being successful in this area.
Yeah, I definitely will. And just as a side note, so I mean, that study that just came out, the 2020 Women in the Workplace study that was produced by McKinsey in partnership with Lean In, is a great report, and people should read it if you haven't yet. So it really gives you a clear perspective on what could be some of the unfortunate negative outcomes of pandemic. Aside from safety and public health, there's going to be an impact on women in the workplace. And what they found through the survey is that I think it was 1 in 4 women potentially would be leaving the workplace. I think 2 million women were quoted as potentially leaving the workforce total as a result of this pandemic, and how it's wreaked havoc on many of their lives as they've tried to integrate their personal and their professional. And interestingly, I think that the stat said that work-life flexibility was denoted as the largest issue that was raised for them as to why they would potentially not stay in the workforce. And interestingly, we've done some research with Thomas, one of the leading minds as it relates to industry data, and we have a release of that data coming out in December. But a similar finding was there as well. This work-life flexibility, there really is no, I don't think, true work-life balance, but that flexibility that organizations have to look at as to how do you blend the personal needs of an individual that's part of your team, as well as their professional needs and their aspirations, is critical. And so I think it goes to the conversation that we're having with companies right now, and that we as a community are having just generally about diversity, equity, and inclusion. And how can manufacturing companies make their companies more adaptable and create cultures that are inclusive of people from all different demographics, walks of life, and backgrounds. So we've talked to many companies. Most companies are aware that something's got to change, or maybe something's got to give within their current organization to not only retain their talent, but to attract new generations of talent to their workplaces. So we've created lots of opportunities for companies to share best practices. So many companies have had this on their radar for quite some time and have been doing an excellent job as it's related to recruitment and retention and advancement of diverse individuals within their organization. And we're sharing those best practices to other companies, so that, again, people don't hopefully have to start from level 0, but instead can say, wow, a company similar size to mine was successful in executing this program. Perhaps this is a place to start, or this is where my company's at. So in terms of recommendations, we help companies as they assess where they are on their DE&I journey. We also help connect companies with other companies that they can learn from. Again, we're sharing best practices through different social outlets and through webinars to our other members, so that they can have a playbook, or perhaps at least some guidance as they're starting this journey. And then as well, we have a DE&I task force that we've created. So we have a task force of leaders in industry, from presidents of manufacturing companies to those in human resources and talent development from some of the leading companies in the country and globe, who are helping us develop year-round resources that can be online, both through on-demand sessions and learning workbooks, so that we have an even larger repository of information that companies can use as they're starting their journey or continuing their journey. When companies ask us, how do I get started? I think first and foremost that doing that assessment, kind of where is your company at, kind of looking at the strengths and weaknesses of your organization as it relates to supporting those that are diverse. Often a starting place is creating a women's ERG group or employee resource group or affinity group, and then creating similar groups for other populations in your organization. And then as well, kind of leading from the top and having your leaders really committed to wanting to espouse a very inclusive and diverse organization. And, there's lots of training best practices as it relates to kind of making your leaders ready to have that type of culture. So there's lots of great resources that we offer to companies and or individuals, and we're happy to share those with others.
That's great. I mean, I just did a presentation on like employment brand for now. And that was one of the pieces of information I shared as well, is that it's not, you can't go from 0 to 100 overnight in terms of your approach. It really does have to be a mindfully authentic journey that fits your culture and your organization. And the other, note is that as we're thinking more, broadly about workforce, there's a lot of underserved parts of our world that we are not tapping into that could be great candidates, all across the different spectrum of job openings that are in these manufacturing businesses. So I love that you guys have sort of a roadmap recommendation. I think that's the biggest piece, is what we saw a lot of businesses do is jump on a bandwagon earlier this year, and that's just not good enough. It has to be really intentional and authentic to who your organization is. And if you're not, at 100% in your plan, there's a place to start, but I do think it's overwhelming for businesses. And it's also, you don't want to go out there and say something that's going to get a negative response. So it's a little bit challenging for leaders too, to make those overt statements unless they really feel like they can live with it long term. So
Right.
Thank you for
Yeah,
sharing.
you can't just create, what we're seeing is, again, as you said, I think companies are dramatically trying to take quick action, and you can't just create a director of diversity and inclusion and call it a day. And I think that's what we're trying to help companies, that once you've made that investment for, let's say, in a position or a group or some type of initiative, you can learn from others. And there's other ways to make it a real authentic endeavor. One of the things that we're doing is we're holding a human resources virtual roundtable, because so many people are in the same place. They have now a corporate initiative or a corporate,
Right.
priority
Yeah.
to focus on this, yet they need those kind of, okay, and now what? So the goal is to bring together these people responsible for hiring, for leading now DE&I in their organizations, to talk about what are others doing? What are the budgets that you have? What are the key initiatives that you're kind of using to further this mission and this endeavor? So again, kind of sharing authentic and successful tactics is really important from one company to the next.
So
Yeah.
Allison, go ahead, Kathy.
Yeah, I just was going to say, I absolutely agree. We did get a really great question about like senior leadership. And so the question is about, where do you tap into or start a recruiting process for looking for a female leader that is ready to become a CEO or a president of an organization? How would you, suggest that search gets approached? Do you have any thoughts on that?
A search internally within the organization, like
I
to identify
think
a high potential person who could have
I
that
think it's more
future success.
outside. Well, I'm sure there'd be an opportunity to think about it both ways, but I feel like it was more about like, how would you conduct a search more broadly than just your own workforce in terms of,
Sure.
To hire a senior leader.
Yeah. So I have to not laugh, but the number of calls that we get is kind of amazing, of individuals who are on the search side, looking for executive women to lead organizations, plans, facilities, global operations. There's a lot of individuals searching for talent. And so I would say that, some of the best resources are looking at our networks. So, we don't prohibit people from going to our public LinkedIn group, which I think is now more than 9,000 subscribers to it. There to perhaps, socialize or get to meet some of the leaders in manufacturing that connect to us. Obviously, a benefit of membership is that you have access to our directory. So if an individual joins or a company joins, they have access to our directory to network and to meet others. And then our job board is probably the best resource. So we have a job board called WiM Works, and it allows companies and individuals, perhaps even on the search side or direct hire side to post positions, to again, look at the applicants that we have there who are open to new opportunities. So WiM Works can be a great resource as well. But I think externally with search, it's really important for, if you're in that role responsibility, to make sure that you're, properly describing and outlining that position. There's lots of research done about how are you authoring that position? Are you crafting it in such a way that that's going to be attractive to the types of candidates that you're looking to hire? I mean, there's lots of research done just even around the words, the verbiage used in a job posting or an opportunity posting, that it can turn off certain types of candidates, or it could be more attractive to certain kinds of candidates just in the way that you're wordsmithing that posting or opportunity. So I think looking at that, I think looking to where you're posting the search, and then kind of, our network and our community is large. And so, that's a great place to meet some exemplary women who could potentially fill positions that companies are looking to fill.
Yeah, but I love that people are considering it. I don't think that, you want to be limiting a search to just one, a female leader, but I love that that's a consideration set to trying to think about that as, and to your point earlier, it could be a real culture driver to have that more diverse group of people leading your organization at many different levels. So as we are starting to look into 2021, what are some of the things that are, kind of topics that are coming up for you? What are you guys seeing in terms of priorities for 2021 in terms of your community, as well as the businesses that are included in your community?
Yeah, so I think that, some of our key priorities as an organization, obviously, we are very in touch with our member community. We have a board of directors that is 22 persons strong for our association, and then an education foundation board that helps us prioritize funding for the right educational resources and training tools for companies and individuals. And as we look into 2021, we really see, a need to highlight innovation, automation, technology, to help bring to companies even more resources that they can use to accomplish business and employee retention and development in potentially elongated different times, which are a bit constrained. So that's a core focus for us. We're also looking, obviously, to provide more resources to companies as it relates to development. So the launch of our new Women in Production program, and then from there, figuring out what are those other resources that organizations, companies need as it relates to people development. Not all companies have budgets where they can create their own academies and their own institutes. So we're really trying to create affordable options that companies of all different sizes can use and plug into to develop their people. So that is a key objective for us next year. Also, organizationally, we have lots of chapter growth. So while I said we have almost 30 chapters, we have 6 more in development, and now there's interest for us to expand globally. So we're very excited. We've had now international participation in many of our events. And I've had the great opportunity to speak at a few international manufacturing conferences. So we're trying to figure out kind of what's that next step. We know we have a growing population in Canada, a growing population in some different parts of the globe. So trying to figure out how do we support women in manufacturing expanding. So again, that we can provide resources to companies and individuals all over the globe. So we're really excited about that. As it relates to companies and their certainty or uncertainty for next year, we're hearing positive things from companies that, while this year was tough, they've adapted. They've made potentially some cuts, or they've created some new methods and workflows of innovation that has allowed them to sustain or thrive during these times. So I think we're positively optimistic that next year, companies will continue to support us, to continue to support their female talent, and kind of work in partnership to continue our growth.
Yeah, and I know you mentioned that you got that survey coming out. What could you share some of the, the types of pieces of information that are going to be shared out in that survey that you're sending out, are going to have available in December?
Yeah, so December 7th, I think it is, we will release our first ever in partnership with Thomas. It's a diversity, equity, and inclusion benchmarking study. So it is meant to be now an annual study that we'll do year over year so that companies can see how they're performing, and then also compare it to how other manufacturing companies are performing. And the things that we're looking specifically relate to recruitment techniques, retention and internal leadership programs and investments that they're making in people development, and then as well their advancement, trends, and success. So the results will be released in early December, and we'll share the findings. And then if companies are affiliated with us through corporate membership, they'll have a special expanded version that gives even more breakdown and detail for them, again, that they can use hopefully as they year over year look at their performance in attracting and retaining and developing their female talent.
Yeah, fantastic. I know that we've been, in terms of some of the employer branding programs, we've been asked about that kind of data and research, because companies are looking at, we're here, or we think we're here. We don't really know what the rest of the marketplace looks like. So I think that's going to be really valuable insights that will, help every organization level up. So thanks. So do you have to be a member, or do you have to be a corporate member to get access to the survey, or is that something that you're going to be sharing more broad?
It will be shared with everyone. So it's an open survey and study that we'll be sharing, similar to the McKinsey Women in the Workplace. It will be accessible by all, but again, as a corporate member, you'll get some special benefits and some special expanded information. I think some of the most telling things from the survey that people will find is we get into into the detail and the minutia of what are those things that are drivers for keeping female talent. So what are the things they value in their organizations? What are the things that are missing? So what are those things that your organization could do more successfully or implement that would keep you or want to have you kind of continue your career with this company? So some really great things that I think companies of all different sizes can have as takeaways and deliverables as they look again for retention and recruitment. And there's a whole section on recruitment and what are companies doing and kind of what's most successful. So I think some really good information for companies.
And can you talk a little bit about the data pool? Was it lots of different size organizations? Who was the survey sent to?
Yeah, so it was sent to men and women in industry and all different size companies. And part of the output will be some information on the demographics. So who completed the survey, where they were located, the size of companies and sales. So you'll get to kind of see the big, large pool that we had that participated.
Fantastic. Well, thank you. So do you want to start to open it up to some additional questions? We've gotten some really meaty ones so far. So Lisa, is there anything else that has come through, or?
There's one great question, Allison, when you were talking about how next year for 2021, WiM is looking to expand. One of our participants actually asked about expansion. So is there a way to find out if there's a chapter in your area, or if it's one of the expansion chapters, or maybe they're interested in starting one? So could you tell us a little bit more about that?
Sure. So definitely reach out to us. We have a team member, Audrey Imes. She leads our chapter marketing and development. So on our website, you can see a current map and a listing of all of our active chapters. But Audrey and her information is online. You can reach out to her direct to either get connected with an existing chapter or with one that's developing, or just to start a conversation with us about perhaps starting a new initiative in your local area.
No, great. Thank you.
Yeah,
So
go ahead, Lisa.
No, go ahead, Kathy. I'm finding my question that I had written down here. So
yeah, I wanted to kind of step back, because we've talked a lot about the programs, but I want to make sure that we were able to, talk about specifically, what are some of those strategies as somebody joining the organization, how would they approach navigating like career advancements? I understand joining the cohorts, but is there some other ways that they might advance their career or tap into, building a mentor relationship or additional, support?
Yeah. So, what I've learned in my 20-year, at least association career, and I think through my whole life, is relationships really matter. And so our organization tries to foster that through all that we do, is that, making a professional and personal relationship can make all the difference in your career and your personal life as well. So what we hope is that someone who maybe is looking to grow their career, grow their network, if they were to join us, obviously we've got our live network of individuals that people can connect with, whether it be through our member directory or our communities that we have on social. We've got Facebook groups and LinkedIn groups, and we've got kind of followings in all those different spaces. It's a great opportunity for an individual. Let's say if you want to find a mentor, to navigate our directory, find someone who's maybe in an industry that you hope to aspire to be in, or in your current industry that you want to grow your career in, and to try to set up a mentoring appointment or just a discussion with that individual. Obviously, meeting live is a great opportunity once we all can do that again. At conferences, we try to facilitate live networking where people can make connections that are useful for them personally and professionally. We've got our leadership programs that are great if people want to enroll and they're at a certain level of their career and they have kind of that corporate support to participate in some of our more formalized programs. We also do our virtual learning series, which is a great way for an individual to expand their knowledge base. So they can, on a monthly basis, at a member, no cost rate, you can participate in a live learning session. I think we've got one in a week or two. And what's nice is that they're all recorded and then placed into an on-demand learning library so that any of our members at any time can access the learning library to learn, for example, about emotional intelligence or navigating customer concerns or how to build kind of your negotiation skill set. So lots of great, again, development tools that are more micro and bite-sized that someone who's trying to advance and to grow their expertise can tap into on demand and at their leisure that can definitely help them professionally. So I think, the other thing that we try to highlight at our conferences is sharing those best practices and those panels so that a younger woman, for example, in her career can hear from others about how they've done that, how they've executed, how they've risen, and maybe learn and not have to make some of those same mistakes along the way that some other women had to experience.
Yeah, I've heard most recently, a lot of people investing in personal like advisory boards. So having I guess I never really thought about that, but I think that's also, a unique way of getting good feedback that is both career and personal advice. So I'm sure all the cohorts probably bleed into a little bit of personal too, which is hard not to.
Yeah,
So
those are really important, the personal advisory boards. We have groups as well. So like similar to a Vistage or a local EO or a local group that you may participate in, we have special groups we created a few years back just for executive women. So knowing that women who kind of have that manager, director, supervisor role often maybe can use even more one-on-one guidance with one another. So we've created those. They've been very successful. They meet 2 times a year, typically in person. They have a facilitator. Actually, it's me for the facilitation of the 2 groups we have present day. And again, it's kind of a private, intimate community where they can share, hey, I'm having this employee issue. How would you suggest that I overcome this? Or, hey, I'm scared about my next review. Any advice? So it's more of a private support and coaching community that really can have a huge impact on that person's success in their position.
fantastic. Lisa, did you have another question?
So going back to Allison, when you're talking about kind of that communication, collaboration, networking, connecting, one of the things that you said is the groups really, when you look at this year, and I know you, Kathy, and I were talking about this right before we started the webinar today, is how do you onboard someone? So of course, as we're bringing in new leaders, we're in this time of virtual piece, and you mentioned that you'd heard some really creative ways on how people have been handling onboarding. Is there anything that you could share with our audience today as far as what maybe other manufacturers are doing, since there are those of us that are thriving very well and hiring quite a few people, but how do you handle it in today's environment?
Yeah, I think onboarding is one of those topics that have come up. So those exec groups that I mentioned,
Mhm.
we've been doing lunchtime chats with the groups because we can't meet in person. So we've been talking about things like that. So how to onboard new employees, the tactics being used. Obviously, technology is our best friend right now. It's allowing us to meet today. It's allowing us to do our best and to try to do, an adequate, if not exceptional job in bringing on new employees. So the things that we're seeing some companies do, obviously, is creating buddy systems. So you don't want to have a new hire who gets a laptop and gets a VPN and you said, okay, great, go for it. Here's your work instructions. Here's your scope of work. But having a lot of mentoring, a lot of coaching, a lot of kind of that buddy system so they have support. We're seeing obviously a huge increase in team check-ins and team connectivity. So whereas a team maybe wouldn't meet as a group except for perhaps once a month for performance reports, we're seeing many companies who are doing 2-3 times a week team meetings, but they're shorter in size. They're more micro, and they're all adding social elements so that people are getting to know each other a little bit better. They're kind of gaining this support. They're having accountability, which is important during this time. But as well, they're feeling more of a community by doing some fun things such as, we've heard virtual happy hours, trivia nights, or trivia activities. And we're seeing companies really seeing kind of the impact of that isolation and making sure that there is that connectivity so that people don't feel that isolation, especially as a new hire or employee. We're in state of Ohio, so we just got locked down again just this past 2 days. So not the best conditions. And so, my team and I, for example, were planning our holiday party, which we were hoping could be live. And now it's going to be virtual. And we're doing really fun things like a virtual, I think it is, trivia activity, and again, gifting employees and trying to show appreciation. So, I mean, I think sometimes we don't think about the fact that, a $5 or $10 Starbucks card can make all the difference in someone's day who's working really hard as a new employee or as a current employee, to kind of get their work done and as well still balance some home issues, some kid issues. So I think that acceleration and that increase of appreciation gestures we're seeing from not only from our organization, but from the companies that we're working with, they're making that time and investment to making sure that their employees feel really appreciated.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really pushed us to be not just with onboarding, but I think what worked back in March and April in terms of connectivity with your team looks a little bit different right now, because it's been so many months where we've had either a hybrid workforce or a completely virtual workforce. And so yeah, we just did a party with a bingo game where we actually
Nice.
had, everybody's different, our clients were part of our bingo game, our employees, our, communities. So it was pretty fun to do that bingo game, but I will never volunteer to make the bingo cards next year, because it was a lot more work than I expected. I forgot that I was going to have to change it up multiple times. So
We did have one card that had two of the same, so we joked that that was the unfair advantage, but it was still fun and it was part of our culture. So I love you, Allison, speaking more about like what fits. Maybe it is trivia night because you've got a great team like that, but it could be happy hour and somebody's leading, how to make a specialty cocktail, and it's rotating through the group, finding something that the group would enjoy, that's fun, that gets everybody together and gets you talking, even if it is in a virtual setting like this.
Yeah.
Have you heard anything around sales and marketing that organizations are doing differently? That, I mean, obviously a lot more virtual tactics in sales process, but what were some of the things that were surprising or innovative in terms of what you saw this year?
Yeah, so for sales and marketing for our manufacturing companies that we're connected to, I think they're obviously being forced to be more creative and to figure out new ways if they're consumer facing, new ways to get kind of products to those consumers. So looking at, obviously, I think increased advertising in places that maybe weren't priorities prior, but obviously lots more people are watching TV, lots more people are listening to the radio and listening to podcasts. So I think investments in some of those places where maybe people weren't investing as heavily before because they were perhaps investing in trade shows or live events. So I think you see this kind of return back to some of those channels for marketing that maybe weren't as utilized in recent years. Again, I think being creative, a lot of companies are doing some really cool things to outreach to either current customers or potential customers. People are now excited to get mail, even though they have to sanitize it and do all the stuff to actually open it. But some really creative campaigns around kind of showing loyalty and expressing gratitude for loyalty with current customers, as well as some really cool campaigns to kind of excite new customers that people are doing through direct mail. And obviously, a lot of companies have come to us for perhaps some paid webinars. We have some opportunities for paid advertising on our website. So we're definitely seeing some increased traffic and interest in people using those vehicles as well, including our newsletter. We have advertising. So we're seeing, again, a bump of interest in advertising in those spaces too.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Again, you just kind of touched on something. I was just on a call earlier where we were talking about pivoting some of the ad spend. Obviously, LinkedIn's been a huge channel for us in terms of focus for a lot of our clients. But we were talking about how do we, find that riches in the niches approach in a different way with some of our association partners, where we're really, we've got that great audience, but we're not, doing a print ad like we might have done in the past. We're really moving budget to something that's more digital or a digital experience with that same, niche focus of audience.
Yeah.
Well, Allison, I want to say first up, thank you so much for your time today, sharing so much great information regarding Women in Manufacturing Association, your education foundation, really how your mission is supporting both men and women in the marketplace. So many great ideas and content. I hope our audience is just as excited about hearing that as I was today.
No, thanks for having me.
So for those of you attending live, or perhaps you're watching this later, if you have questions for Allison or think of something you'd like to reach out to, we do have her contact information up on the screen. You can also find Allison on LinkedIn as well as Twitter. So we have her handle here as well. So again, please reach out with questions. If not, we'll also provide in our follow-up email a link to the Women in Manufacturing site and some of the resources Allison had mentioned if you'd like to check things out further, or perhaps reach out to them with more questions and become a member. So Allison, again, thank you so much for your time today, and Kathy, yours as well.
Great, thank you. Take care.
All right, so as we move ahead, this was actually our last webinar for the 2020 season. Hard to believe that we are rounding out the end of November and looking in just a few short weeks to being in 2021. So biggest message here is stay tuned. We are working on a great content series for our 2021 webinars. So if you're not already on our mailing list, I highly encourage you to go to Red Caffeine's website and sign up for our newsletter called Red Letter. We'll be posting more information about that on our website, but be one of the first to know by being on our Red Letter mailing list, and we'll have more information for you here in just the next few weeks. So with that, if today was your first Business as Unusual webinar, I hope you enjoyed it. We look forward to having you tune in to our future webinars here in just a few short weeks. You can also visit Red Caffeine's website at www.redcaffeine.com. Go to the Business as Unusual series right in the center on our home screen, and you can see all of our past webinars starting from April this year. So lots of great content to look for. If you'd like to reach out and learn more about how Red Caffeine can help you with your go-to-market strategy, you can email us at connect@redcaffeine.com. So with that, thank you everyone for joining. Have an amazing rest of your day, and we'll see you in 2021. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks.